The HOA Karen told me I had no right to be there. She stood on my land and ordered me to leave. Behind her were 98 brand new houses, already sold, already lived in. She said the paperwork was done. The rules were changed. And my property belonged to the community now. I could have argued. I could have called a lawyer that day. But instead, I smiled and walked away. Because while the HOA was busy enforcing fake rules, they never checked who actually owned the ground beneath their homes. And when the truth came out, every single house became a problem they couldn't escape. I had owned that land for a long time. Longer than most people in that town had even lived there. It wasn't fancy land. No lake. No big mansion. Just a wide stretch of open property at the edge of a growing neighborhood. I bought it years earlier as an investment. Something to hold onto. Something quiet. At first, it sat empty. Grass. A few old trees. A dirt access road I rarely used. Then the neighborhood started growing. New houses appeared slowly. One street at a time. Construction trucks came and went. I didn't mind it. In fact, I barely noticed. Until one morning, I took a drive past my land. I wasn't planning to stop. I was just curious. Curious turned into confusion. The dirt road was gone. In its place was fresh asphalt. Painted lines. Curbs. I slowed down. Then I saw houses. Not one. Not two. Rows of them. Uniform. Finished. Landscaped. I pulled over and just sat there. This didn't make sense. That section of land wasn't zoned for development yet. I knew that for a fact. I checked it every few years. I stepped out of my car. A woman noticed me almost immediately. She walked fast. Confident. Like she owned the place. She was in her late 40s. Perfect hair. Clipboard under her arm. She stopped a few feet from me, and the first thing she said was, "Can I help you?" Not friendly. Not curious. Guarded. I told her my name. I said, "I own this land." She laughed. Not loudly. Just enough to insult me. She said, "No, you don't." I felt something tighten in my chest. I told her I had the deed. The property lines. The tax records. She waved her hand like she was brushing away smoke. She said, "This land belongs to the HOA now. The rules were updated." I asked when. She didn't answer directly. She said, everything was handled legally. Behind her, people were walking dogs. Kids were riding bikes. Life was already happening on my land. I asked how many homes were built. She said, 98. Like it was nothing. 98 homes. On my property. I asked for documentation. She smiled and said, "You'll need to contact our legal department." Then she stepped closer and lowered her voice. "You shouldn't be here. This is private community property." That's when it hit me. They weren't confused. They weren't mistaken. They were confident. And that scared me more than anger would have. I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I got back into my car and drove away. But my hands were shaking on the steering wheel. That night, I didn't sleep. I pulled out my old files. Original purchase agreement. County maps. Survey markers. Everything matched my memory. The land was mine. Every inch. So how did an HOA build 98 homes on it? The next day, I went to the county office. The clerk looked nervous when I gave her the parcel number. She typed slowly. Then she frowned. She said, "That's strange." According to their system, the HOA had filed an updated boundary adjustment. Approved months ago. My name was nowhere on it. I asked how that was possible. She said, they claimed the land was abandoned and absorbed into community zoning. Abandoned. I paid taxes every year. I asked who signed off. She gave me a name. The HOA president. The same woman with the clipboard. That's when I realized this wasn't an accident. This was a decision. And someone believed I wouldn't fight it. I went home and called a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. A land use attorney who had been around forever. I laid everything out. He listened quietly. Then he said something that stuck with me. If your deed is clean, this is going to hurt them badly. I asked how badly. He said, they built before they verified ownership. That's a serious mistake. But he also warned me. This wouldn't be fast. And it wouldn't be easy. I told him I understood. What I didn't tell him was this. I wasn't in a rush. Because they weren't just using my land. They had sold it. And the longer they lived there, the worse the truth would feel when it finally arrived. The next few weeks felt strange. On the surface, my life looked normal. I went to work. I ate dinner. I slept. But underneath all of that, my mind was locked onto one thing. Those houses. Every time I thought about them, my chest tightened. 98 homes. Families living their lives. Kids sleeping in bedrooms built on land that still had my name on it. And an HOA that acted like I didn't exist. My lawyer told me to stay calm, to let him handle communication. But I needed to understand what they were telling people. So one afternoon, I went back. This time, I parked outside the neighborhood and walked in. No confrontation. No clipboard woman. I just listened. There was a community board near the entrance. Flyers. Rules. Announcements. That's when I saw it. A printed notice titled, Updated Community Land Use Rules. According to that paper, the HOA had expanded community boundaries due to abandoned adjacent property. They claimed the land had no active owner. No maintenance. No development. Which was a lie. A clean lie. Professionally written. I took photos. Then I talked to a resident. A young guy walking his dog. I asked him how long he'd lived there. He said, about 4 months. I asked who owned the land before. He shrugged. The HOA said it was absorbed. That's why prices were good. That sentence stuck with me. Absorbed. Like my land was nothing more than empty space. I spoke to 3 more residents that day. Different people. Same story. The HOA told them everything was approved. Zoning cleared. Boundaries finalized. No one questioned it. Why would they? They trusted the paperwork. That's when I realized something important. The HOA Karen wasn't just stealing land. She was hiding behind rules. Rules most people didn't understand. Rules that sounded official. My lawyer confirmed it a few days later. He laid it out plainly. They filed a boundary adjustment request with the county. Claimed you were unreachable. Claimed non-use. I told him I paid taxes every year. He nodded. That's why this is bad for them. But he also told me something else. They're still enforcing HOA authority like they own it. That's when we decided not to rush. Instead of immediately filing, my lawyer suggested we watch. Let them dig deeper. So we did. And the HOA didn't slow down. They sent out fines. Parking violations. Lawn warnings. All issued on my land. I obtained copies through public records. Every fine. Every letter. Signed by the HOA president. The clipboard woman. Her confidence hadn't faded. If anything, it grew. She was expanding authority. Setting stricter rules. Acting untouchable. One afternoon, I received a certified letter. From the HOA. Addressed to me. It stated I was trespassing on community-controlled land. They demanded I stop interfering. They threatened legal action. I read it twice. Then I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was bold. They were threatening the legal owner. That letter became the turning point. My lawyer smiled when he saw it. "This is good," he said. I asked how. He tapped the page. "They're officially asserting ownership they don't have." He explained that every enforcement action strengthened my case. Every fine, every rule. It showed intent. And intent matters. Meanwhile, residents were settling in. I saw moving trucks, new fences, play sets, people planting trees. I felt conflicted. None of this was their fault. They trusted the HOA, and the HOA trusted their own lies. But I reminded myself of something. This wasn't about revenge. It was about ownership and justice. Behind the scenes, my lawyer started preparing. Quietly, he ordered an independent survey. We pulled aerial photos going back decades. We documented tax payments. We even tracked the original zoning approvals. Everything pointed one way. The land was mine. Every inch. Then came the first crack. The county sent the HOA a notice. Routine review. Nothing alarming on the surface. But I knew. Because my lawyer requested it. The HOA had to respond with proof. That's when the tone changed. I heard about it from a resident. A woman who recognized me from my earlier visit. She approached me at a grocery store. She asked, "Do you know what's going on with the HOA?" I asked why. She said, "They canceled the board meeting. Said there's a legal issue." I didn't say much. I just nodded. Over the next week, things shifted. The HOA president wasn't around as much. Emails went unanswered. Fines paused. Rules stopped being enforced. Fear had entered the room. My lawyer finally filed a formal claim. Quiet. Precise. No drama. Just facts. And once it was filed, everything sped up. The county froze further development approvals. Banks were notified. Title companies flagged the homes. Suddenly, 98 houses sat on land with a question mark. That's when residents started asking questions. Real questions. And the HOA had no good answers. Because lies only work until paperwork shows up. And ours was about to arrive in full. Once the claim was officially filed, the situation changed almost overnight. It was like the neighborhood went from sunny skies to storm clouds without warning. The HOA had been untouchable for months. Confident. Bold. Acting like my property was theirs. But now, suddenly, they were cautious. Nervous. I stayed out of the spotlight at first. I didn't want the drama to distract from the main goal, proving ownership. But news travels fast in small communities, and soon residents began whispering. One afternoon, I was driving past the neighborhood, just to check on progress. I noticed the construction crew had slowed. Some houses sat half-finished. Others seemed abandoned overnight. Trucks were gone, dumpsters left behind. That's when a young couple stopped me. They didn't know me personally, but they'd seen me talking with my lawyer a few weeks prior. Their faces were pale. "Is it true?" the man asked. "The HO. They don't own the land?" I nodded slowly. He shook his head. "We just bought a house here last month. What does this mean?" I tried to calm them. "Don't panic. It's not your fault. But yes, legally, the land still belongs to me. Everything built here is technically on my property." You could see the panic set in immediately. I didn't enjoy it, but it was unavoidable. Meanwhile, inside the HOA offices, things were collapsing behind closed doors. My lawyer informed me that the president, the same clipboard-waving woman, had begun frantic calls with the board members. Their rules were suddenly useless. Every violation they had sent me became evidence against them. Every letter, every claim, every fine. And they realized something terrifying. The homes they built were now liabilities, not assets. Banks flagged mortgages. Title companies froze transactions. Realtors panicked. Residents started calling the HOA for answers, and the HOA couldn't give them any. Not a single clear answer. Then came their desperate moves. First, they tried intimidation. They sent letters to me, claiming trespassing, harassment, and even illegal photography for taking aerial photos of my property. My lawyer laughed. Each letter, each threat, became more ammunition for my case. Next, they attempted a legal loophole. They claimed the property was abandoned years ago, and that continuous tax payments didn't count because I wasn't actively developing it. But their claim was weak. Every survey, every receipt, every map, every record proved my ownership beyond a shadow of a doubt. By now, the residents were fully aware of the tension. Some even started siding with me quietly. They liked their houses, but they were disturbed by the HOA's lies. People began asking questions openly. The community board meetings turned chaotic. Angry voices. Confused homeowners. And the president. She was missing most of the meetings, trying to hide from scrutiny. Every action she made only dug the HOA deeper into a hole. They tried to fast-track more construction approvals. They called contractors to rush work. But it was too late. The county had frozen permits. The lenders had halted transactions. One day, my lawyer called me with news. They know the law isn't on their side. Their own rules were broken. And the public record proves you own this land. They're panicking. It felt surreal. The same people who had treated me like I didn't exist were now scared of me. And the best part? They had no idea what was coming next. While everyone else in the neighborhood was panicking, I was calm, quiet, patient. Because legal battles aren't about anger. They're about precision, patience, timing. And in this case, timing was everything. I had one more move before this became public. One final piece to push the HOA completely over the edge. But I kept it close to my chest. Let them continue their chaos. Let them show their desperation. Let them make mistakes. Every wrong move they made only strengthened my case. And soon, every single home, every rule, every violation, would be exposed for what it really was, built on land that wasn't theirs. The clipboard woman, the president of the HOA, had no idea how fast karma was about to hit. And when it did, it wasn't just legal consequences. It was the truth being revealed for everyone to see. By the time Part 4 begins, everything had shifted. The HOA's confidence had completely crumbled. They were scrambling to cover tracks, but the truth had already started to surface. It started quietly. One by one, residents began discovering paperwork discrepancies. Title reports flagged errors. Bank notices were sent. Mortgages frozen. Some buyers were even told their homes might be in legal jeopardy. Word traveled fast. Neighbors approached me nervously. Some were angry at the HOA, some fearful of me. I reassured them, I had no desire to evict anyone. I just wanted the truth acknowledged, and my property rights respected. Meanwhile, inside the HOA, panic reigned. The president called emergency board meetings. Emails flew back and forth. Threats. Legal letters. Ultimatums. Every attempt to enforce fake rules became a liability against them. Every threat they made was now proof of their overreach. Then came the first major turning point. The county inspector arrived. Their job was routine, but the timing was perfect. Every house built on my land was evaluated. Building permits? They existed, but for land that wasn't legally theirs. Zoning compliance? Questionable. Everything was under review. The inspector left and delivered the news quietly to the county office. It spread like wildfire. Contractors were suddenly hesitant to continue work. Lenders froze loans. Even residents started receiving notices about possible legal complications. Inside the HOA, tension skyrocketed. The clipboard woman, the same one who had confronted me months ago, looked frantic. She tried calling every lawyer she could, every consultant, every contractor. No one could undo what had been built. Every action they'd taken on my land was now evidence against them. And that's when I took the next step. My lawyer filed a detailed court notice, including every survey, every tax payment, every record going back decades. We weren't just claiming ownership, we were showing the HOA had knowingly violated the law, that they had intentionally misrepresented ownership. When the HOA received the notice, their panic became visible. Board members argued openly in meetings. The president was absent more than present. Staff whispered in hallways. They knew they couldn't win. Every house, every fine, every fake rule was now a problem. Residents began calling the HOA directly, asking hard questions. Why is this legal? What about the taxes? Who really owns the land? The HOA's inability to provide clear answers only fueled confusion and fear. And here's where karma really began to hit. Contractors started refusing to continue work. Banks pulled funding. Homeowners began questioning the legality of their purchases. The houses, which were supposed to be assets, were suddenly liabilities. The HOA couldn't enforce anything anymore. They had created a ticking time bomb on every lot. Meanwhile, I stayed calm. I never wanted chaos. I wanted justice. I wanted recognition of ownership. But witnessing the domino effect was satisfying in a quiet, controlled way. By the end of that month, the neighborhood was in chaos. Residents were anxious, board meetings were canceled, construction crews were gone, and the president of the HOA was hiding from scrutiny. She had no control. Her power had evaporated. The community's trust in the HOA was shattered. Letters and emails poured in from residents demanding answers. Lenders requested legal verification. Realtors refused to finalize transactions. The HOA's authority had crumbled entirely. I remember walking through the property one evening. The sun was setting, and the light hit the houses in a warm glow. It should have looked peaceful. Instead, it was a reminder of the tension that now filled the neighborhood. But I didn't feel anger. I felt calm, patient. Justice had begun to assert itself, and the HOA had no way to stop it. And in that moment, I realized something important. Karma isn't loud. It's precise. It doesn't need theatrics. It just needs truth. Every house built illegally, every rule enforced falsely, every threat they made, they were all coming back to them in ways they couldn't control. The HOA had built on someone else's property. They had assumed power without proof. And when the proof arrived, every single action they took was exposed. It wasn't about revenge in the typical sense. It was about letting reality, law, and truth work their course. And in this case, the course was devastatingly effective. The final chapter was surreal. After months of tension, legal filings, and quiet observation, everything finally came to a head. The court scheduled a hearing. It wasn't flashy or dramatic on the surface, but inside, it felt monumental. My lawyer presented every document, every survey, every historical record. The evidence was overwhelming. Ownership was clear, unquestionable. Every claim the HOA had made collapsed under scrutiny. Inside the courtroom, the HOA president sat nervously. Her confidence was gone. The clipboard woman, her main enforcer, looked pale, avoiding eye contact with anyone. Board members whispered among themselves. For the first time in months, they had no answers. Every rule they had enforced, every fine, every letter of intimidation, every claim of community ownership, all of it was exposed as baseless and illegal. The judge didn't need long. The ruling was straightforward. The land belonged to me, every inch of it. All houses built without proper authorization were technically on my property, and the HOA could not enforce any of their rules. They were ordered to halt construction, stop issuing fines, and provide full disclosure to all residents about the land's legal status. The reaction outside was chaotic but satisfying. Residents were confused, angry, and relieved all at once. Some were frustrated that their dream homes were suddenly complicated legally, but they understood it wasn't my fault. The HOA's lies and manipulations had put everyone in that position. I met with a few residents privately to explain the situation. I assured them that my goal was never to evict anyone. I just wanted the truth recognized and my property rights honored. Most were understanding. Some even thanked me for exposing the HOA's deceit before it became a much bigger problem. Inside the HOA offices, the atmosphere was grim. Emails poured in from lawyers, lenders, and county officials. Board meetings were canceled. Contractors refused to continue any projects without proper legal verification. The president and her clipboard enforcer were forced to resign. The HOA's credibility in the community was destroyed. But the most satisfying moment came quietly, weeks later. I walked through my land at sunset. The houses were still there, unfinished in many cases. Streets and curbs existed where my dirt road once ran. But it didn't feel like a loss. It felt like closure. I knew the law was on my side, and justice had been served. I had not acted out of anger. I had acted strategically, patiently, and methodically. The HOA's overreach had been exposed, and karma had quietly done its work. From that day on, I kept the land under my control. The HOA never returned. They never tried to enforce any new rules. Residents learned a harsh lesson: just because someone claims authority doesn't mean it's real. And I learned another: patience, preparation, and persistence can defeat even the most confident and arrogant adversaries. Looking back, the experience changed me. It was more than a property dispute. It was a lesson in human behavior, in the dangers of unchecked power, and in the satisfaction of letting truth and law prevail. The HOA Karen who once waved her clipboard at me? She became a cautionary tale in our town. People remembered how quickly confidence can collapse when it's built on lies. And I finally felt peace knowing my land, and my rights, were fully restored. Karma had hit hard. But it had been precise, fair, and unstoppable.